Hello strategy gaming enthusiasts, my name is AlzaboHD, and in today's video we will elevate a people from obscurity to create a dwarven dynasty. This is not a Lord of the Rings fantasy, and we will make this more difficult by playing unmodded CK3, conquering only counties with mountainous or hilly topography, and only playing dwarven characters with the exception of our campaign start. We'll have to use creativity to breed dwarven seed into our dynasty, and when you're ready, it's time to play Dwarf Fortress 3 and declare war against humanity. And speaking of war, this video is sponsored by War Thunder. Zoom in from Map Gaming and experience history firsthand by air, by land, or by sea entirely for free. War Thunder is the ultimate online vehicle combat game and features incredible graphics in 4K resolution for a fully immersive experience on PC and cross-platform. War Thunder features one of the most dynamic and detailed damage models in gaming, and whether friend or foe, each blow directly influences the operation of your crew and components. Support AlzaboHD and download War Thunder for free using my link below and benefit from a week of premium and free in-game currency. A special thanks to War Thunder for sponsoring today's video. Our story starts with a sadistic and lustful teenaged one-province count, but this man is of nominal verticality. In unmodded CK3, there are no dwarven rulers in either starting date, and we're gonna have to get creative to get down to earth. The cursed count we've chosen starts his campaign with the worst trait in the game, infirmity. This malady severely stunts his vitality with a severe health penalty, and his court counselors circle his throne like vultures. As an unmarried man, Rofolfo appreciated the little things in life and sought to wife his small Saxon sous chef, and within days meat was back on the menu. Our ailing count needed to pass his seed before sickness snuffed his rooster, and after a three-way fray, his dwarven dame let him down by becoming pregnant with the other man. His spouse's secret ingredient would be kept from prying eyes, and our count had fallen at his king's court, earning him the title of Stumbler. There was no surprise when the Countess gave birth to a bastard boy, making the piccolo Giacomo dwarven son and heir of the county of Cuneo. If you thought that was unlucky, Rodolfo choked on a bone on his way to the Doge's tournament in Venice, became wounded by falling over, and became severely wounded when he accepted a duel from a man who could actually move his hand. On his last day of life, he asked his wife if she had ever loved him, but the results were inconclusive. Rudolph would die at the advanced age of 19 and passed his crown down to his wife's, lover's, biological son Giacomo, who at the age of 0 years old had mastered many skills. This dwarven count would forever change the history of humanity, and this is his story. Our prepubescent protagonist is officially a member of House Oriarte, but behind the scenes, his lineage lay with his low-born father. As a dwarf, Giacomo naturally sought to embrace a mining tradition, and had his mother marry into Cornish culture by saddling her with a low-born, stable boy. This Celtic career could now assimilate our Count of Cuneo into the Cornish culture, and instructed his little lord in the ways of hunting. But little G could not escape the sins of his father, and Giacomo was informed of his bastard status at the age of 4 years old. He would travel across the land, searching far and wide to understand the power he had inside. Like the dwarves of yore, Gio had an affinity for gold, but his old secret had spilled out, exposing his adulterous ancestors and brandishing our dwarf with disputed heritage. He would have to prove himself as a legitimate leader, and converted to Cornish culture, claimed the neighboring county of Montferrat for himself, and became renowned for his due diligence. But despite his natural abilities, Giacomo came of age as a lowly clerk and set out to work on developing his dwarven domain. To establish his reign, our little lord betrothed a little lass, developed his capital's mountain pass, and embarked on a diplomatic mission to convince his liege to grant him a court position. Despite his own bankruptcy, Giacomo was promoted to steward of the Kingdom of Italy, married Jordanka, and embezzled gold to finance his miniature marriage. Our deceitful duke then set about converting hooks into currency, forced the Pope to grant him claim to the Duchy of Savoy, and financed a personal army by blackmailing the lords of the land. By 890 AD, the Carling King of Italy was replaced by a Carling Queen, and at her coronation, Giacomo had won a standing ovation by succeeding in victory with his poetry. G-Man then used his private military to wage war against Novara and wiped his enemies with ease, annexing the area in less than 9 months of conflict. Back at court, Giacomo found out his wife was a lesbian and might never mate, a frustration that our count addressed by slamming out poetry and defining his drip. Our poet then murdered his friend and maiden of Montferrat in an effort to break his neighbor's alliance and piled in with an armed invasion of Asti. This was a disaster militarily, but fortunately, Giacomo was called to become regent of Italy, as his queen was now positive with an STD. Her treasury would not be embezzled easily, but her loyalty could be regained with poetry, while his army had at last obtained victory. With his counties now held contiguously, Giacomo's sapphic spouse had somehow obtained pregnancy, which in turn motivated our lord to victory in a tourney of chess. Our protagonist was thus drenched in prize trip, and his firstborn son and dwarven heir Dungarth secured the succession. At the turn of the 10th century, the Duchy of Piedmont was created, and our dwarven duke received lordship over Turin from his deceased queen. The Papal States honored our ascension with tribute, our courtiers were embezzled a second time, and the Turinese nobility were stripped of their titles. Victory after victory followed Giacomo in tournaments across Italy, and he soon birthed his first daughter Goglathorn and second son Farfadon. But Giacomo had forgotten his dwarven vows, and at the age of 36 he was brutally mauled in a hunting accident. After only 3 decades of dwarven rule, the duchy thus passed to his 6-year-old son and full-blooded heir, Duke Dungarth. Succession is rarely a simple affair, and Dungarth's brother, Farfadon, inherited half of his late father's fiefdoms, forcing him to revoke his brother's hold over Turin. Our diminutive duke then renamed the duchy in honor of himself, and Duke Dungarth of Dungarth moved his capital to Dungar. Next, he had House Oriarte renamed in honor of Deep Rock, and sought avaricious ambitions on his path to adulthood. Money would be the only thing that mattered, and his fat stacks secured the betrothal of a Chad-child bride, but Dungarth, like his father, desired a higher position of power. Sucking up to his king made him a friend in high places, and with Cisalpine and Cornish cultures increasingly accepted, our duke combined their cultures into Dwarven in 918 AD. In the direction of the Holy See, Dr. D farmed piety through prayer, but upon his trip home he dueled a deer, and our disfigured dwarf had his face erased. He had a face that only a mother could love, but luckily money secured his fiancée's loyalty, and the two were married in a massive ceremony. For the first time in history, a Duke of House Dungarth had married into a family of average verticality, but his short seed was strong indeed, and produced progeny worthy of his name. With his sister sent to Venice to secure an alliance, Dungarth took to the streets to compete for glory, and like father, like son, won first place in archery, first place in poetry, and first place in horse racery. To honor his accomplishments, Pope Honorius II showered our sovereign in gold, and he had the old man fabricate the land of Genoa. Our duke's best friend and suzerain granted him reign over the Duchy of Friuli for free, but Dr. D needed more counties and declared war for Genoa in 932 AD. History, like herpes, has a tendency for repetition, and when Dungarth's best friend and Italian king fell down with the sickness, our little lord was called to lead the regency of Italy. His first order as regent would be to establish his duchy as a march, ended his trip to Genoa by May, and asked the father of Christianity for money near constantly. With over 6,000 piety, Dungarth could afford to ask for even more, and had the Vatican grant him claim over the Kingdom of Burgundy, as its queen was a woman, and the Pope stood for patriarchy. As head of the dwarven culture, Dungarth forsake fishing in exchange for industry, and with the Queen of Lotharingia busy with rebellion, it was beyond time to make a kingdom for our dwarf. The Dwarves of Dungarth declared war on the human Carling Queen in 934, using their halfling children as diplomatic pawns to secure allied soldiers. Over 15,000 men pledged loyalty to our Little Red Riding hero, and he was about to zero the forces of his feminist foe. But although Provence was procured, Queen Ermengarde held a secret. Her aunt was married to the Byzantine Basilius, and he was pissed and sizest against our idea of a dwarf fortress. These weak Greeks would be hunted and axed to leave the land, granting Dungarth the upper hand in negotiating peace. Riches of mahogany awaited our mountaineers, and at last dwarves had a kingdom to call their own after the largest war dwarvenkind had ever known. Burgundy would become our home, and humans would have to learn their place as our king relieved them of their titles and holdings. In the court of our mountain king, the humans of Middle Europe were treated as servants, and the new crown capital was to be named in honor of our heir. We can't move it there until Dungarth dies, but we can reforge the realm with the help of creative inspiration. The dwarven nation would now be known as Din Kuldir, and I may or may not have spent 3 hours changing the name of every county, duchy, and kingdom-level title to reflect the changes in our realm. All standard-sized sons were forcibly married to many maidens, and Terithien pondered upon his future as ruler. Catholicism just wouldn't cut it, and our people needed a faith to conform to the dwarven values of mountains, money, and ale. Now, Dungarth could choose Druze, but booze is haram, so we'll choose Druzy, a custom religion of hedonism, financial extortion, and mountains. We'll make our king the temporal leader of this faith and make everything illegal, so that our people will have to pay to pray off their sins. But the Druze of Din Kuldir could not elect a dwarven pope until Rome was erased, which is why the Holy Order of High Hrothgar was founded in 938 AD. Our king's hobby of hunting and imprisoning humans had made him many enemies, and when his daughter, Isoda, was murdered, he became a Tolkien stereotype. Any humans left who had put up a fight faced permanent exile, as only those under 5 feet would inherit these lands. Back in the capital, our king was handed radioactive tribute, and with human reactionaries plotting his assassination, saw his own son murdered before a Slovenian hitman retired him from history. Dungarth's 35 years of rule will forever be remembered as a turning point for dwarvenkind, and the crown of Din Kuldir passed down to his teenage son Terithien I. Unfortunately for Mr. T, dwarven girls are a rarity, and he'd have to betroth his late father's ex-wife to produce progeny of pure blood. Terithien had seen the cruelty of humanity firsthand after his sister, brother, and father were murdered, and set about evicting his anthropocentric adversaries, replacing their rule with his cool uncle for Farfadine. Upon reaching the age of consent, he married the blinded bird that once belonged to his dad, and was the first diligent and ambitious autarch to have succeeded in school. Industry had arrived in Din Kuldir. Terithien murdered his non-dwarven brother from another mother, and inherited the mountain land that would become the crown's capital. By 943 AD, the last human had left their holding, and only the Druze of Dynasty Dungarth were deemed fit to rule the internal realms. What was once a dead mountain pass would be developed as an underground metropolis, and what was once a dead bedroom would be developed with nudity and potatoes. Terithien's penchant for slaughtering non-dwarven dynasty members had marked him as a kinslayer, and he embarked on a foreign policy of bribing kin from abroad to fill his lines of lineage. Having claimed the Holy See as his own and becoming best friends with France, the Din Kuldiran king was ready to rock Rome after clearing his home of the last human inhabitants. Ironically, other humans abroad embraced our faith, and by 948 it was time to castrate the power of Christendom and humanity by waging war upon the papacy. This sacred showdown was never going to be a fair fight, and it was our king's honor to vacation in Rome while his bearded boys occupied the Pope's home. The capital of Christianity had fallen to the Druze, and news that Terithien's sister wife was pregnant with his nephew's son sent our men back to Din Kuldir. Pope Gregorius was forced to part Rome from the Holy See in 950 AD, which in turn marked the creation of the Dwarven Druze papacy. Terithien's first order as pope would be to grant this non-mountainous metropolis to his son, who he granted independence to rule the newly named county of Gora. When he wasn't sleeping with his sister wife and breeding inbred babies, Terithien took advantage of his new office and granted spiritual pardons in return for pay to pray. Our dwarven culture had by now spread from the sea to Switzerland, and our portable pope was keen to push forward the frontier by any means necessary. All of Italy lay before our king, and Terithien was keen to invade the lands of his foe and former friend. Milano was brought down to earth by the iron forge of our alliance, and the Italian capital was captured in a matter of months. Behold the pinnacle of Italian efficiency, a nation twice our size who surrendered in less than 2 years. The flat and forbidden lands of Tuscany were granted to our inbred nephew's son, who became their independent leader, while the mountains and hills were granted to low-born little people. Human sheeple would in turn fertilize our fields, and I seriously spent another 2 hours renaming all of our counties using a dwarven city name generator. The proud Bavarians were beaten into Swiss cheese, and their duchy was dwarficized into the mines of Maria. Our king consecrated his dynasty, diplomatically revassalized Tuscany to remake its name before throwing them away again, and sired twin-bred Mini-Me and Mini-Moi. The coastal hills of Corsica were the next target of Terithien's ambitions, and fell within 3 years, ultimately becoming the caves of Algerond. No human could look down upon our dwarven domain, and at this point I'm ready to end the campaign. It's time to explore Din Kuldir after over 100 years of Dungarthian rule. In 978 AD, our polity encompasses the plurality of the hills and mountains of Alpine Europe, the coastal hills of Corsica, Rome, which is suspiciously mountain-free, and the independent state of Khazad-dûm, ruled by our inbred nephew's son. Our dwarven Druze Pope Terithien rules over a court that is entirely short-staffed and is polygamously married to his 3 sister wives to maintain tradition. The ruling Dungarth dynasty is well known for their passion of rock and stone, and out of 63 living members, our house has 36 pure-blooded princes who in turn rule over the redesigned and renamed counties and duchies of our domain. Druze is practiced by nearly every citizen of Din Kuldir, and our ruling dwarven culture encompasses nearly 50% of the population of our nation. We've combined Cornish with Italian to create these traditions, and dwarfs benefit from mountain homes, mining stones, and industrial development, the effects of which have made us the most technologically advanced people in medieval Europe. And speaking of Europe, the mountainous metropolis of Din Kuldir is more developed than even Paris, though Gulha, formerly known as Rome, remains the most developed in-game. Out of all of our video campaigns, this world is by far the most unusual, and further abroad, there's a French-cultured Ireland, Anglo-Norse Danelaw, Slavic Sorbia and Germany, the Pope controls Sicily, and an Italian-French Macedonia controls Thrace. There are Judaic polities in northern Germany, a Christianized Scandinavia at war with itself, and the Muslim Ummah has entirely exploded with the Najat Reformation emerging in Iraq, and the Abadi sect controlling almost all of Africa. The only military threat to our realm is Khuzarite Khazaria, who possesses 12,000 soldiers, and in the coming decades, our dwarves plan to expand into the alpine lands of Sorbia and Germany. Size isn't everything, and we've at last obtained our dwarven dream. Before we end this narrated mockumentary, I'd like to thank you for watching this far and supporting AlzaboHD. There's more CK3 and strategy gaming content coming soon, and if you want to support me for free, consider liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and dropping a comment for the AI algorithm. This video was made in collaboration with War Thunder, and I invite you to check out the description link below to play the game for free and obtain goodies like a week of premium access and digital currency. You can also support the channel via Patreon membership, which gives you a name in the following credits: